Hi, welcome to Miss Richardson's U.S. History 5-Minute Lectures. This information is U.S. Notes 1.24, Causes of World War I. It includes information that goes along with the fourth section of your study guide. Remember, you control the lecture and always use your study guide for your notes. Let's go ahead and get started. The final big foreign policy you need to know about during this period is World War I. So how does World War I fit into the unit, you might ask? Well, one of the major causes was imperialism. After World War I, most countries were much more aware of the consequences of their imperialistic actions. But let's get started at the beginning with the causes of World War I. First, I want to start with what I call the spark that started World War I, the assassination of Archduke Francis Ferdinand. Yep, you heard right. This one guy from Austria-Hungary gets killed and the whole world, or at least Europe, goes to war. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what happened. Now, I'm going to tell you the whole story of this in class, but here I just want you to see how this one guy ended up causing World War I. So, Serbia had been taken over by Austria-Hungary in their imperialistic actions, and Serbia did not want to be controlled by Austria-Hungary. They wanted to be independent. So, when Archduke Francis Ferdinand went to Serbia, he was assassinated by the world's worst assassins, but we'll get to that part in class. They were terrible. Anyway, once Ferdinand was dead, Austria-Hungary wanted to punish Serbia. They're upset. The Archduke was a cousin of the king, so he was pretty angry. So he wanted to crush the Serbs. Crush them, but not so fast. So Russia backed the Serbs because they had a lot of Serbian people who lived in Russia. So they had ethnic similarities and historical connections and all that sort of thing. But not so important for us, just they backed the Serbs. So Russia and Serbia are against Austria-Hungary. Wait, Germany has to be in this. So Germany allies with Austria-Hungary. So they'd always had this ally and promised to help each other in case of a war. Now that there was a war, so Germany had to get involved. So now it's big, but it's not a world war yet. I'll just wait. So Germany had built up their military and had actually planned what to do in case of a war. So being stuck right smack in the middle of Europe, they realized that almost any war they were in would be a two-front war, fighting on both sides of the country. So they thought that would be difficult to win because their military would be split in half. So they had actually already created a plan called the Schlieffen Plan. You don't have to remember that name. It's just fun to say, Schlieffen. So if Germany went to war, their Schlieffen Plan said they would attack France first, then once they defeated France, they would attack Russia. What? How'd France get pulled into this? Well, they were just off there minding their own business, but they were part of the Schlieffen Plan, so because of that, Germany attacks France, and France is suddenly in the war. So Germany, in order to attack France, sends their army. The fastest way to get there is through Belgium. So they invade Belgium, and when they do that, they upset more people, which includes Great Britain. So Great Britain had committed an alliance with Belgium, saying they would protect them. So when Germany invaded, Great Britain said, we're going to war, and declared war. Now all of Europe is at war. Crazy, right? Now, that's not really the underlying causes of the war. That's the guy who got shot there, Francis Ferdinand. The underlying causes are why all this happened. So what are those underlying causes? That was the spark, but militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism, Maine, to help you remember, are the causes of the war. You can see that militarism through Germany's plan that they had to follow. Alliances drew Russia, Germany, and Britain into the fight. Imperialism caused the fight between Serbia and Austria-Hungary in the first place. And nationalism is what caused the Serbs to desire independence and the rest to want to prove that they were the best. So those are the causes of the war. By the end of 1914, all of Europe was at war. So what about the U.S.? What was happening with us? Well, we decided to be isolationist, which meant we didn't want to get involved. We were going to stay out of world events. We, in fact, did not get involved in the World War I until 1917. So you may now be asking, why is it called a world war if it's just Europe? Well, because all of these countries, Russia, France, Austria-Hungary, Germany, Britain, had practiced imperialism over the years, and the war spilled into their controlled lands in Asia and Africa. So it was a world war. Now, between 1914 and 1917, the war was essentially a stalemate. Neither side really won anything during this time. So the U.S. tried to remain neutral, but there were definitely actions that had Americans favoring one side, particularly Britain. Now, these actions included Germany's declaration of unrestricted submarine warfare, the sinking of the Lusitania, the Sussex Pledge, and the Russian Revolution of 1917, as well as the Zimmermann Telegram. So eventually, the U.S. actually did end up joining the war in 1917. Germany's declaration of undeclared warfare, or unrestricted submarine warfare, was in the Atlantic Ocean. This meant they would torpedo and sink any enemy ship, or any ship supplying their enemies. The U.S. was still trading with Britain, so this meant their ships were in danger. Then, in 1915, a German U-boat, or submarine, sunk a British passenger ship, the Lusitania. It was carrying 128 Americans and 4,200 cases of ammunition for the British. So, while it wasn't a military ship, it was being used for military purposes. So this threat, though, to Americans upset the people in the U.S. So the Germans agreed to the Sussex Pledge. They promised to warn passenger ships before sinking them so people could get off the ship. So not really realistic in wartime, but that's what they promised to do, and it lasted less than a year. Then the Russian Revolution happened. This is one of the big reasons the U.S. had not joined the war. The Allies, Russia, Britain, France, and Serbia, were all democracies except for Russia, which had a czar, or king. Germany and Austria-Hungary were monarchies. So in 1917, when the Russian Revolution happened, that got rid of the monarchy and put an elected government in power. So that meant World War I was now a war of democracies against monarchies, and that was an idealistic fight that Americans could support. The final straw came with the Zimmermann Telegram, or Zimmermann Note, in 1917. This was sent from Germany to Mexico and promised to return Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona to Mexico if they allied with Germany and fought against the U.S. in World War I. This was at a time when the U.S. was not in the war, so it really upset Americans and made them angry that the telegram was intercepted and released. So today there's some question about the authenticity of this note, but in 1917, when tensions were already high, this caused the U.S. to actually enter the war, declare war in World War I. That happened on April 6th of 1917. So it was the war to end all wars, and we were making the world safe for democracy. Luckily, we have World War II after that. So you can see it wasn't really successful. So this ends notes 1.24, 1.24, and I'll see you in class with any questions you have.